At the core of the legal battle is coal. Oklahoma has 14 coal-fired power plants. According to figures from SourceWatch.org, in 2006, those plants produced more than 36 million tons of carbon dioxide, 104,000 tons of sulfur dioxide, 61,000 tons of nitrogen oxide, and the plants were responsible for 35% of the state's total CO2 emissions. The website says per person, the CO2 emissions alone are almost 50% higher than the U.S. average. Oklahoma U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe believes coal use should actually be increased, including more Oklahoma coal.
If you look over in Photo, in that area over there where they have these huge strings they're now being able to recover, we have clean coal technology now.
For the head of the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign in Oklahoma, clean coal is not possible, especially what comes out of the ground in Oklahoma.
The coal that's mined in Oklahoma is high in sulfur content, which means it's dirtier than out-of-state coal. And tax credits that were passed by the state legislature are the only thing that's keeping the coal mining industry in Oklahoma alive.
There are 67 power plants in Oklahoma, creating electricity by using coal, natural gas, water, and wind. But of all the state's capacity, electricity produced by burning coal comes first.
Coal is the low-cost option. We have 2 coal-fired power plants. Those facilities run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all out, because it's the lowest cost option.
Attorney General Scott Pruitt filed a lawsuit over the EPA's decision to reject most of the state's plan for reducing haze in favor of the EPA's plan. While the state and federal government disagree over the time frame for taking action and the kind of action to take, the lawsuit is really over something else.
The Clean Air Act is very explicit. When it comes to attainment under the Regional Haze Rule with the Clean Air Act, there's a responsibility the states have to act, to develop a plan, and partner with the feds.
Oklahoma argues that the Regional Haze Rule empowers the state to create a plan to deal with the problem. But in this instance, the EPA decided to toss out Oklahoma's approach and substitute it for one of their own, without proper authority.
It was an aggressive posture by the EPA. It was, I might even say, an arrogant posture by the EPA. And that is something that I think we need to respond to.
While the legal fight is focused on rules and how they are followed, the public relations battle for Oklahoma companies and political leaders is focused on other things.
It's not a health-based action by the EPA. It's aesthetic or visibility.
And there's another point of view on that.
More air pollution means more childhood asthma attacks. Log on to lungusa.org and tell Washington, don't weaken the Clean Air Act.
It's the same pollution that creates haze problems is the same pollution that contributes to health problems like asthma and heart attacks and different lung diseases that many Oklahomans deal with. There's 100,000 children in Oklahoma currently living with asthma.
Oklahoma's plan would get to the attainment levels the EPA wants by 2026, largely by continued use of low-sulfur coal while switching over to natural gas.
There are alternatives that are much lower cost and get us to the same point. And we believe that those should be looked at before we default to this high-cost option.
The EPA wants any switchover to natural gas accomplished by 2016. And they want scrubbers in place on 6 Oklahoma coal-fired plants in 3 years. To that, OG&E and AEP-PSO argue it would cost billions of dollars, all paid by consumers.
With the scrubbers being in place, the scrubbers on coal-fired plants, and it's going to cost, as you know, roughly $2+ billion.
The Sierra Club's Whitney Pearson points out the coal-fired plants involved have operated for decades without scrubbers, and the EPA's efforts to have them installed have gone on for years.
Regulations of coal-fired power plants that the EPA are setting forth are long overdue, and these coal plants are one of the largest sources of pollution that are hazardous to our health. We can't wait until 2030 to start transitioning and retiring these dirty coal plants.
Oklahoma has some powerful backing in this fight with the EPA.
My opinion is the EPA ought to get out of Oklahoma and leave us alone so we can produce our own coal and our own jobs, and we'd be a lot better off.
And Oklahoma U.S. Senator Jim Inhofe is doing more than just making speeches on the Senate floor.
His staff actually has been very helpful to us as an office in this particular issue on regional haze. His legal team there, working with our legal team, it's been a great relationship.
OG&E and AEP-PSO have joined the Attorney General's current lawsuit, but OG&E appears willing to expand the fight on their own.
It's really a very preliminary step. The Attorney General is, his approach is more from a state perspective. We will likely continue to look at litigation just from a what I would call an operations perspective, should it be necessary.
For all of the ongoing disagreements over how to reduce haze, for Attorney General Scott Pruitt, this lawsuit is just the first salvo in a much larger war he sees on the horizon, a war between the states and the federal government.
We're on the front curve of this issue. Other states are watching to see what happens in Oklahoma because they know they may be next. We think that there are many agencies at the federal level, whether it's FDIC or EPA or the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, some of the agencies that were created under Dodd-Frank legislation last year. We believe that there are several agencies that routinely engage in guidance.
Or put another way,
they almost say, maybe you ought to do this. And wink, wink, and kind of there's an intimidation factor that if you don't, we're going to come after you.
There has been little, if any, common ground between Oklahoma and the EPA since the Clean Air Act was put into law back in the 90s. At this point, it doesn't appear likely that will change anytime soon, especially since top Oklahoma officials see this fight as doing battle against an overreaching and increasingly aggressive federal bureaucracy. While governments and political leaders argue, the scientific community is virtually unanimous. The Earth's atmosphere is changing because of air pollution. Norman-based meteorologist Simon Brewer is a co-host of Storm Riders on the Weather Channel.
That even if the globe in general didn't start to warm because of other natural factors, that man pumping that much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere will have an effect. Changing the chemistry of the atmosphere will have an effect on the atmosphere in general.